Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. And this session is brought to you by Precisely Windshuttle and Pivotree. My name is Mohsin Maqsood, and I'm your host today. I'm a director of product innovation for Pivotree, and Pivotree is an end-to-end commerce service provider. And our goal is to make our customer and our customer's customer buying experience seamless and frictionless. So in today's call is going to be about a similar proposition, how we have achieved a frictionless vision with our customers and how we deliver those services to our customer. Today, we're going to be touching base on one of the topics around data onboarding and enrichment and how exactly we do the data onboarding enrichment for our customer. You guys all have gone through a data onboarding and enrichment practice in your past life. If you handle the data, you're the right person who is listening to this conversation. We have been working with different manufacturers, different partners, different companies about this data onboarding process. Very, very quickly, we realized that there's a very big gap and very big problem in the market, that there's a lot of time that is being spent on data onboarding and enrichment. And it's a lot of manual effort that goes into it. So we started to work towards that. What can we do? What can we do to help our customer achieve this thing in a much more frictionless way, much more seamless way to achieve this thing? So we started working towards automating this whole data onboarding and enrichment process. So we started looking at machine learning. We started looking at artificial intelligence to leverage some of these things that to build these pipelines and workflow that could bring that automation into it. So and very, very quickly, we got to realization after doing some, and we're going to go over those case studies as well in the next few slides, that we started to realize that there's a possibility, there's a gap in the market where we can bring in intelligent automation. We can bring in IA at that point into the market using the machine learning, using AI functions, and using the models that we already have from a trained render, from the stuff like that. We can start leveraging all that information to start automating that whole process. And how we do that, and what it basically helps, that's the conversation we're going to go into our conversation today during our meeting. So the process of driving up the quality and driving down the cost of your product onboarding, that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll start with a very small thing first, the problem statement. Why and what basically start us thinking about this whole problem statement. There are multiple sources, as we all know. They bring those multiple sources, bring data silos at that point, which also increase a cost. It brings a high cost because you're saving that information into multiple different locations. You have to pay for different, obviously, hosting services and all that stuff. It brings that high cost to it. At the same time, it's not just because it's high cost. It brings a human error because, as I said earlier, it's humans that are actually touching it every part of the time, and depending on what they're touching it and what their understanding is, it's bringing then that human error. And that human error basically creating a time-consuming effort for our customers at that point, because when you have an error in your system, you're not going to get the right information. You're always going to go and troubleshoot that information, and that is time-consuming at that point. And because of that, it's a very, very repetitive process at that point. And because of it being repetitive, that data entry and transformation makes it more error-prone at that point. And it is technically, end of the day, comes into the positioning of revenue and an opportunity lost. And when we're losing a revenue and opportunities because of not having all the information, because of having a multiple data silos, that's when everybody comes to us at that point and be like, what is the possibility? What can be done? So we started looking at like, okay, what is the possibility of product data onboarding that is manual right now, time consuming and expensive? What do we need? We need a faster and more consistent way to provide customer a better brand experience through their sales channel. Currently, experiences are significant. It's a delay and it's time consuming. It takes us long time to launch, and it basically brings in more inefficiencies in our internal processes. So then we started to realize, okay, we need to help our customer do this thing, do this data onboarding process more smartly, more intelligently, and make it more automated so that it's less error prone, less costly, and more time sensitive at that point. So if you don't know what data onboarding is, let me just quickly touch base on it and just have you guys understanding, and we'll touch on enrichment as well. A process of pulling a data from a variety of sources and transform it into a standardized format is basically a data onboarding enrichment. Data onboarding helps you unlock greater value for a marketing of your product in a time sensitive and cost conscious way. So that's the process right there for you guys of what data onboarding. So what you're looking in your screen, that has been a traditional method across years and years of, if you have been working on data onboarding stuff, this is what happened. You have sources, you have different APIs, you have REST submissions, SFT information, somebody's putting a CSV into your format. It could be a database integration that you're doing it, where you're pulling the information from. And then you bring that information to transform and correlate, and manual person is sitting in and doing this thing, correlating that information, removing the duplication, cleaning up the text and all of that stuff. Then you go into the next phase of it, where you're auto categorizing it, you're auto color normalizing it, you're putting the size normalization, you're putting country normalization, you're putting the attribute predictions and all that kind of, you're doing all of that stuff very manually. You're collecting a data, filtering it, putting your schema on it, doing the data enrichment on it, and then you do the normalization. And once all of that is finished, then you have your golden record. And the part that is what's happening in the traditional design is at every single step, there is a human involved. There's a human intervention involved. There's a manual process that is involved into it. And that manual process, as we talked about the problem that our customer have talked to us about, is time consuming and error prone. So when you have all these dependencies onto something, then a customer will be like, okay, now we need to think about much more holistic view. What can be potentially done? And what are those possibilities that could be done to change this traditional model into much more a future looking and future visionary way of thinking about it. So we quickly started to work with our different verticals in a customer. We took this problem and started talking to different types of vendor. We understand this problem is absolutely there in retail because we know that problem is there. But is this problem is also in a different vertical that are not as custom and traditional as a normal? So we started talking to commercial landlords. We started talking to publishers. We started talking to hospitality companies, and started to realize that they have, all of them have this similar problem in their own ways, in their own fashion, in their own understanding of how they are handling the data. They all have this thing. And the baseline is they all wants to basically get to their consumer, get to their users as fast as they can, as frictionless as they can, and as quick as they can, which drive us to thinking what I was talking about, to build this product called Dive, which uses obviously machine learning and AI to build an intelligent automation. And that's where we're going to talk about today. To quickly jump into it, what we are doing differently from a traditional to the new way of thinking about data onboarding and enrichment process. So let's dive in. How we have helped our customer to drive down the cost of product acquisition and data onboarding. So here's an example. You can see this person taking an information from multiple different sources. As I said earlier, it could be a REST, it could be an SFTP, it could be an image that is being fetched from somewhere, it could be a data integration, a database integration, or anything. We have taken that information and we're pulling that information automatically from those sources. And then we're looking at that information and transforming, correlating, parsing, imputing, cleaning up using machines at that point. As you can see this conveyor belt, you're seeing what's happening is that everything is going through it. It's between, there's a dive model that sits in there, and then it sits down, and then basically storage, you have your, it could be your PIM system, it could be your e-commerce system, it could be your ERP or multiple ERP, it could be an MDM solution. Anything that needs that transformation and normalization, it basically normalizes that information and feeds into it at that point. So question is, how are we doing this? What is that data onboarding process? And what's the differentiation that we're making from a traditional versus automating way of doing it? And the most important thing and how we're achieving this thing and how we're doing this thing is, as I mentioned, that we're taking, doesn't matter what the source of the data, we take all those sources of data, put a template, like for example, X customer has this template on how they want their data to look like. But the first step of the method that what we do for them is, from all the different vendors and sources of data, we started to normalize their data to their template, whatever the template that they have, basically to their taxonomy at that point. We start to normalize that data. Once that data is normalized, we start to transform, parse that information, and start cleaning that information by using that, all that information. Obviously, the end of the day is you get those golden records. So next step is like, now you need to look at your image recognition. You need to realize, you need to see the image that's coming in. So we're using our image recognition technique, machine learning. We're using our NLP, like natural languages, or text processing techniques to actually do all of that stuff. So we're doing image recognition through machine learning at that point. We're doing text extraction, we're doing vectorization, we're doing standardized regulation or dimension reduction. If, for example, you're entering a text XYZ, for example, you're entering information as like 20 volt kilovolt, and we need this and this information with a 2 feet diameter, like for example, as an electrical example, you're putting all that information in there. That type of data is very much formatted in a not very clean way. Once you put the machine to work towards that, machine knows, okay, it's using the text extraction, it's using a text processing, a natural languages NLP techniques to start creating these models, starting to normalize that text, start cleaning up those texts at that point, and put those things into your golden record at that point. And that's where really the differentiation that we have seen, or I would say make for our customers at that point. So let's go over common use cases that we have seen with their customer, where we have used machine learning and AI to implement a intelligent automation. The customer comes to us and asks us a question like, can you help us with define similar records? Absolutely, yes. How do we do that? We put the machine towards the work. So removing that human effort or human intervention, we train our models. Our models are being trained on the different stuff. And then we bring in the product similarity. You want to classify the record. It could be as simple as normalizing the data field. It could be removing the duplication, so deduplication of the record. A data quality could come in at that point. An object for an image, or you want to classify your image to differ for colors. So what kind of jacket that I have it in my inventory, or what kind of jacket do I have it? Or you want to do a fuzzy matching of your data sets at that point, or you want to detect anomalies. You want to put some sort of a data governance or a data stewardship on your system at that point. So what happens is we are putting a machine to the work at that point. So eliminating a human intervention at that point and training machine learning models and making them intelligently using unsupervised and supervised learning to tell these machines to do a certain job, to do it more adequately and in a time-sensitive way. But at the same time, we have put these positioning in. If we detect an anomaly, if we detect that there's a retraining need to happen, or somebody update that information that needs to be updated for the future reason, or they have for example, they used to have a small, medium, and large. Now they have extra large and triple XL or double XL in their sizing. Now they need to train the model to actually detect the differentiation between them two. So rather than re-updating all your data information, redoing all of that, all your sizing and stuff like that, you can just give that information to machine. Machine can train over in a week, 2 weeks period. And now whenever the data comes in, it basically knows, okay, I know this information is for that. So let me categorize or put this attribute in a right place at that point. So you can do all of that. But as soon as you detect those anomalies, we have the human, as you can see in the end right here, there's a human sitting at the end, which is looking at that specific thing to verify the golden record, to verify if there's an anomaly being detected, if there's something that needs to be looked at, because it's very important and very necessary or highly necessary for somebody to verify if what is being produced into it. We can put the machine to it verification as well, and that's what we do. So what that human is going to do is not going to sit down and go through every single record. Whenever the anomaly get detected, a user, a manual person, is going to now look at the numbers, is going to look at, hey, by the way, we're making this prediction. This is a 90% accurate. Take a look at that. This is 30% or 40% or 60%. And from looking at that, you can make those predictions at that point. By looking at that predictions, you can say that, yes, I want to enrich my information, enrich my data with this new information, or ignore it because I want to put more information and retrain the model so that it gives me the better results of that. Or I want to give you more information so the model have much more larger data set at that point that it can train on and get you more information at that point. So we're enabling humans with the data at that point by making a good decisions at that point, by looking at the predictions of what we're making and how much confidence we have in our prediction. We're giving those percentages to in front of the customer at that point, so they can say, yes, I want to go ahead, I want to set the threshold that if something is lower than 30% or 60%, do not enrich my data because I don't trust that data anymore. I want to have a human look at it and verify it, and if it likes it, then they can enrich it. Otherwise, anything that is above 60%, for example, go ahead and enrich it. That's where the real differences start to make, because then you're removing those manual intervention at every single process of your data collection to data filtration to schema taxonomy to enrichment to normalization. You're removing the human intervention or manual intervention at that point and putting a machine to the work at that point and verifying what machine is doing is correctly. So it's not like we're removing that intervention. We're making the machine do that efficient work, but at the same time, giving the report, giving you the efficiency that, hey, the machine has performed X percentage better, and your model has trained X amount of information better by providing this information or that information. So you're constantly improving your model and your results at that point. So this is just talking about what's the difference from the traditional. And so I'm going to quickly go into one of the examples that we, from one of the electrical companies that we work with, or we are working with still, that we're helping them, how we're helping them. So this electrical distribution company has a lot of different vendors that they're getting information from. And those informations are usually, when they get it, they need to basically take that raw data, as I was mentioning to you guys earlier about templating. They want to implement, they want to do the taxonomy prediction on it. They want to put that information. And when we implement the taxonomy prediction on the environment at that point, we noticed there's a lot of data that was missing at that point. And because of that data missing, you don't have all the information about that. So quickly that customer event is like, what can you do to enrich my information? Can I provide you with the data sheet and the machine can read using image recognition or using NLP techniques or using text processing techniques? Can it learn from the code, from the data sheets, and it could put the information into my and fill the information into my PIM service or make my service better at that point? At that point, we said, yes, absolutely. Why can't we? So what we did, we grab all the different types of PDFs that they have for the data sheets or online. We started grabbing that information at that point and starting ingesting that information with the creating a schematic keywords. Obviously, we created matching and tell them like, hey, this is how predictive this result is, how confident we are with this result at that point. And we started presenting those results to the customer at that point. So ingesting that data, adding that data into it and then normalizing the data, they get a lot more better information into their systems. This is just a one example, and if you go and start talking into a different example, and I can touch base on another example, which is very similar but very much relevant to current world. As we are going through obviously pandemic around COVID, we we did this volunteer program with one of our I just should name it like Ontario Health Organization. They were producing COVID results, and they were doing a lot of testings for different clinics, different places, and they were collecting those results and updating the people that were working in the different offices, different places that you need essential people or essential work and need to be there. They were doing the COVID testing on a daily basis, and those results were like in thousands and thousands of, like, on a daily and even hourly basis sometimes. So what needed to happen, these information needed to be very, very real time. You cannot wait for somebody to do a COVID test and then result shows up after 3 days. You needed that result now. Tests were not taking too long. Tests were like 15, 30 minutes, but the data onboarding and updating the data and enriching the data and updating the customer or updating the owner of that data or user at that point was taking a longer time. So they brought this problem to us and was like, what can we do? We started to sit down to start brainstorming with them. And we started creating this real-time machine learning models for them at that point, and created this intelligent automation around certain things for them. Is we took the data from all the different directly by API integration. We took the data from all the different clinics directly into our system start, and these things were coming into in a sense of facts and PDFs, and like sometimes it was like a paper sheet that we had to basically scan through for the information. It was all over the place. Sometimes it was like Excel sheet, right? So we started taking the data collection from all the different clinics at that point and all the different places, and they start normalizing that data in our system. We had these joins at that point. We knew what we were looking for, the COVID positive, negative. If there's certain type of things that need to be found, we need to alert, blah, blah, blah. So we started looking at that, started normalizing that information. And how we did it, using the machine learning through the image recognition, text extractions, NLP techniques at that point again, that we started using all of that information and put that into the process at that point. Now the normal data got normalized as quick as in a matter of hours, not weeks, not days, in matter of hour or minutes, I should say. Then now the data is basically ready to be transformed and to be translated or to be sent to the users at that point. So then we created another API, which technically go into their SharePoint, but they weren't using any big application for this. So we injected all that information into their SharePoint, where they created these automated flows where they were notifying a specific customer in a specific way. So we sent all that information to their SharePoint with an updated information, and then go from there. But as I was talking about earlier in the past conversation, that there's always anomalies. We did get some scans, we did get some information that was very confusing or not readable by human or a machine at that point. So what we did, we created these anomalies detection in our system at that point. We put those checks and balances in our system at that point. That if we detect something like that and we cannot process, rather than putting it under the carpet, we highlight that to our customer, be like, hey guys, by the way, we are seeing this X sheet number, blah, 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 whatever that is, has no ability to read the text or process the text or understand this. What do we do with it? Can somebody please take a look at that? And then they take a look at that and then update the information and then put it in there at that point. So it's highly, highly important at that point to have these check and balance with the machine, because remember that at the end of the day, we need to make sure that our accuracies and confidence is 100%, if not less. So that's where we basically started doing with these things with the customer. And this is just not related to examples that I've said earlier. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be if you need to find a similar products and you need to classify the record or normalize the data or deduplicate, remove the deduplication or do the data quality and stuff. No, if you have a specific use case that you want to come talk to us about, absolutely. We're more than happy. Let engage us into the conversation, and we're more than happy to help you with what your problem is and help you with that intelligent automation at that point, creating those workflows and using machine learnings and doing the data onboarding enrichment using that at that point. So quickly going into the next stage which is going to be very important, and how we have helped a customer get successful and an impact that we have seen. So you can understand, I've shared the use cases, I've shared the stories around how we have done it for our customer, but this is an impact that we have seen. But if you are a C-level person who cares more about strategic outcomes and tactical outcomes, and if you are a technical person who's only looking for tactical outcomes, that what are those tactical outcomes that we have achieved with this product, with this service at that point, I'm going to go over quickly about these. So strategic outcomes, by creating an automation or by using automation for manual data process, now the team is open to work on more important tasks, a more high value task, and then they can keep themselves engaged and motivated that way. So rather than doing a repetitive task, now they're doing a high value task, making sure that these smart people used for something better at that point. At the same time, what we're doing is actually reducing the time to the market. Now you're fast to the market. By using the automation, the product onboarding process, we have seen some of the customer actually getting almost closer to 80 to 90% reduction in the time to get to the market. And the next thing we have seen is like, it's making very helpful recommendation for the customer. It analyzes the master data system, look at the e-commerce data, and then generate the recommendation. As such as, like, for example, you have information in your system and you want to generate a recommendation, find similar products, things like that. Absolutely, yes. These are all functionality and feasibility that are available through these systems at this point. But if we jump towards a tactical outcome, like what we have achieved from a technical standpoint, we have obviously learned from your historical data. It learns from how you basically and trains a model on top of it. It normalized that at that point. So it's the data normalization. It automatically generates that business rule and standardize for you at that point and learns from it at that. You can also look at the data mapping. It structure your data and map your data, and then you become the favorite customer at that point to your users at that. And then it brings in the product classification, which is very important because when you have the classification suggestion with the high accuracy as much as like 90%, then you don't have those problems about the repeating of the information or deduplication of the information or having a wrong information into your source, into your database, into wherever your repository could be, as I said, ERP, or it could be a PIM, it could be MDM solution at that point. So it's very, very important to understand those strategic outcomes and tactical outcomes to see where you basically fits into the boat at that point. With that being said, that's the end of today's conversation. Doesn't mean that you cannot, if you have a question, please feel free. My name is Mohsin Maqsood. I work, as I mentioned, we as a Pivotree, we're in the business of providing end-to-end seamless solutions to our customer. Please contact us if you have any questions. You can contact Precisely Windshuttle team, and they can introduce you guys to us as well. But if you guys have questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to help you with that. Once again, thank you for listening for today's webinar, and I'm happy to basically help you in any way if there's possible. Thank you so much for your time, and have a good day.